We all know about the famous monsters that come out during Halloween night, but what about the slashers? The maniacally twisted individuals who wield knives, machetes, chainsaws, and many other deadly weapons have haunted cinematic screens for years, leaving a grave impact on casual viewers. But which one has left the greatest mark on the genre? Who is the king of the slashers? Obviously, I can't answer that question because everyone has their own favorite slasher. What I can do, however, is talk about my favorite slasher and analyze why I think he or she is the best slasher. To make this simple, I've taken my top 3 killers and am prepared to analyze them and find out why they are so interesting. They are not in any order, so for now I see them as equals to each other. With that said, here are my 3 favorite slashers. Our first contestant is Michael Myers. Appearing in the 1978 film Halloween, Michael started off his career by killing his older sister when he was only 6 years old. He's sent to an asylum but escapes 15 years later. Donning a William Shatner mask, he returns to his hometown of Haddonfield, Illinois, and continues his murder spree throughout Halloween night. Myers sports a very stylish and pointy kitchen knife. Our next contestant is Freddy Krueger. Appearing in A Nightmare on Elm Street, Freddy was named the Springwood Slasher due to his tendency to be a child murderer. He was burned alive by a group of parents, but by some mysterious ways, he gained the ability to haunt the dreams of teenagers and kill them in their sleep. Freddy is armed with a bladed glove and a horrifying Christmas sweater. Our final contestant is the legendary Jason Voorhees. Introduced in Friday the 13th, Jason was the deformed child of the film's real killer, Mrs. Voorhees. He is shown in a flashback and in a dream where it is said that he supposedly drowned as a child while the camp counselors were off having sex. Jason is revealed to be alive in the next movie and remains the killer of the franchise. He has gone through many designs and alterations, but he is best known for being a zombie wearing a hockey mask and wielding a machete. Well, somebody is dressed to impress. To start off, each character has a creative backstory. One gains sympathy, that being Jason, the other gaining repulsion, Freddy, and the other making us confused as to why they do what they do, Michael. For me, I like Michael's backstory a tad bit more. There's a lot of mystery as to why this child did such a heinous act. Even in the film, when you see a young Michael's face, he appears confused as well. Yes, there is mystery with the other characters' backstories, but Michael's is very peculiar, being that he was only 6 years old when he started his career as a slasher. So I'm going to say that I do prefer Michael's mysterious origins to the other two. Another thing the characters possess is a distinctive personality. Starting off with Michael, we see that while he doesn't appear to show many emotions, it seems that Michael gives off the feeling of gloom and despair. He acts a bit like a confused child in some scenes, like when he stabbed the guy through the heart and just stared at the body like a dog tilting his head back and forth. I would also argue he even has a somewhat wicked sense of humor. This of course referencing when he dressed up like the guy to confuse his girlfriend. Speaking of humor, Freddy Krueger has that trait clearly. He's a sadistic monster and he takes pleasure in terrifying his victims remorselessly before killing them, while making a few wisecracks. On the opposite end of the spectrum, Jason seems to be almost entirely emotionless, but that's not to say that he was always emotionless. In earlier films, he showed fear and signs of devotion to his mother. Then, when actor Kane Hodder began playing him, he gave Jason a distinguishing personality. Though he remained silent, Jason's body language told a lot. It showed him when he was enraged, hurt. There were even some funny moments, like when he removed his mask in front of a group of teens in Manhattan. It's hard to decide which is scarier, a killer that talks or a killer that remains silent. It's clear to me that Freddy has more of a personality than the other two, so I will give him points for that. But I believe that a silent killer is more intimidating than one who talks, simply because no matter what you say or do, you won't be able to reason with the person. Sure, you can't reason with Freddy either, but at least you can hear what Freddy has to say. With Jason or Michael, it's just dead silence. It's a tough call, but I think that Jason has a scarier personality than the other two. Finally, we'll talk about what's most important with the slasher: the slashing. First, I'll start off with the estimated number of victims for each slasher. The list will also include the victims in the remakes. The numbers represent the characters killed in the films. Duh. Starting with Jason, the man behind the mask has killed 109 individuals, 110 if you count him battling Freddy. Speaking of Freddy, Mr. Krueger has killed 38 youngsters. Giving an estimate number to Michael is a tad bit difficult considering if you include the victims from parts 4 and 6, or just skip to H2O and Resurrection. Since the victims are still killed by Michael though, I might as well include them all. Altogether, Michael Myers has killed approximately 126 characters. So it would seem that Michael is the king of the slashers, right? Well, not exactly. Numbers are one thing, but the way they are killed should also be taken into account. Freddy has a variety of different kills, which makes sense because his murders take place in the dream world where any ludicrous scenario is possible. As the sequels progressed, though, the kills began to become more aimed at comedic deaths rather than scary deaths. Just as Freddy had become goofier, so had his methods of murder. Michael's kills were surprisingly limited. True, he had a creative death here and there, but he mostly stuck with using sharp-pointed objects like knives, rakes, and scalpels. The same thing can be said for Jason, however, there's something different when Jason kills a person. His kills don't always appear to be the same kills twice. He will usually use the machete, but he uses it in a variety of ways, slitting throats, stabbing, decapitation, and so on. He's also capable of using not only other weapons, but also using his bare hands. Granted, Michael used his hands as well, but I don't recall Michael being able to crush a man's eyeball out. After much consideration and research, the best slasher, in my opinion, is Jason Voorhees. Though Michael has the larger body count and scarier backstory, and Freddy has more personality, Jason has many things going for him. He finds new ways of killing people, is a zombie, he has the most sequels, and is basically proven to be unstoppable. One can argue that Freddy can't be stopped either, which is true from a certain point of view. But the way I see it, Freddy does indeed die in his movies, only to be resurrected. Jason basically died only once in part 4. True, he was blown up in part 9, but he is essentially never really killed. Even Michael is thought to have died in both Halloween 2 and in H2O. Michael may be evil incarnate, and Freddy may be some evil demon, but when I think of the best slasher, I think of the man behind the mask, Jason Voorhees. There are my thoughts on who is the best slasher of the three. Remember, this is all opinion-based, so just because I see it one way, it doesn't mean you have to see it the same way. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to watch Friday the 13th Part 6. Happy Halloween.